had quite a bit of questions come in about all aspects regarding homeschooling. And one of them was simply deschooling. That was one of the main ones that came up. What is deschooling? Do I really need it? How do I do it? And so forth. Well, I just want to explain to you guys what deschooling is. Simply put, deschooling refers to just recovering from public school. And the purpose is many. There's many purposes for it, both for the parent and the child. The main idea is that, when you've chosen to remove yourself from, or your children, I should say, from traditional schooling, what you want to do is to hit the reset button. You want to get a chance to remove yourself from bringing school at home, right? So there's a period of adjustments. One of the biggest concerns for those who are just starting to homeschool within the few moments of homeschooling, or those who are considering homeschooling, is that feeling of overwhelm. Most parents are overwhelmed. Am I doing enough? Is my child going to learn? I'm trying to scramble all of their textbooks and just continue with what they've been doing at school. It's a word that goes around in the homeschooling community for those who have been experienced for a long time. The word and term deschooling comes about. It's kind of like taking a break or a holiday. I don't want to use the word holiday because sometimes when we think of that, we think of just kind of being on a vacation and free for all. But really what it is, it's a time that's between the traditional learning and traditional educational system that you've had, and then moving into homeschooling and going into what you're about to undertake. So it's kind of like you wanting to find your footing. That's how I would say it. So sometimes deschooling can take weeks. More than often, it will take months. And for some people, it may take even up to a year. You might say, a year? Oh my goodness, that just seems so long. What are they going to be learning in that time frame? Well, it's a time when you're going to sit back and reconstruct, shift paradigms of what it really means to learn. Because many times what you'll find is that you might be, before you can get into a groove, the overwhelm, the information that's out there on the internet, the curriculums, the styles, the forms, what we do, how you do it. There's so much of that it can leave most parents feeling very overwhelmed and unfettered. And most times when you are overwhelmed, you overwhelm the child. I've experienced that for myself. So deschooling is a time when you can now allow yourself to stop and deconstruct many of the methods and on what you think education is, what you think learning is, what you think learning should look like. See, most of the times we have been in a system where we have learned, and it's been steeped into a consciousness that learning only happens in a classroom from 8 to 3 p.m., Monday through Friday, September through June. And that system has been fed to us for centuries, or at least many decades. And because of that, we have to deconstruct that mindset that learning can only take place in those environments. So, deschooling allows you to stop and ask yourself, what do I really think learning is? How do I think an education can be acquired? You can ask yourself and your children, what do you really already know about your child? That would be a great question to stop and ask. And many times, these answers don't always come right away, depending on how long your child has been in school. So if your child has been in school for a few years, then more than likely they have gotten caught up in the system of learning the subject matters, dealing with the nuances of school, and then going on to do homework. And it sort of sometimes squelches the child's innate passions, interests, desires. So the chance that you take to homeschool allows you to defrag from the system that I have to be learning in this frame of mind. Most parents feel very overwhelmed. I've seen it time and time and time again. I've heard it. Many of the homeschooling groups that we are part of, the fresher, earlier ones, they have the same thought process. I feel so overwhelmed. I don't know if my child is learning. I don't know if they're learning everything else. I want them to be on par with all of the other students or with the school system. So it's a time to deconstruct. Deconstruct for you. Ask yourself the question as a parent or the caregiver, what do I already know about my child or children before they started school? That would be the first question. What do I already know? What was my child really good at? What did I know about how my child learned back then? If you can't find the answer right away because it's been a while, that's why you need to stop. Stop and observe. Take a moment. Take a few weeks, take a few months, let it flow. The child needs a time to take a step back, resettle, and go within and find themselves. Another question that you can ask yourself is, what does learning really mean to me? What does learning mean to me? That may take a while because we have been taught to think a certain way about how we learn. So ask yourself the question, what does learning mean? And that may take a while. Why? And anytime the answer comes up, ask yourself, well, why do I think that way? Why do I believe it happens that way? And allow that time to deconstruct. Another thing is, what does my learning environment have to be? So because we are socialized to believe that learning happens in a classroom, then most parents who are at the beginning stages of homeschooling try to come home and recreate that homeschooling construct of school. It doesn't always work, I should say. So we bring it home, we set up the desk, we do all those things, and you find yourself thinking, okay, what are they learning in school? Remember, many times that in the school system, there are a lot of aspects to school that aren't necessarily related to learning or school, whether it's dealing with behaviors, whether it's taking breaks and lining up for the next classroom, whether it's what other things related to the actual learning that takes place. All of those things actually take a lot of time. And when you're home with your child, those things for the most part become unnecessary pieces that you can actually take away or put away from. So those would be questions to ask. So it's really all about taking a break from the traditional schooling and really going into the idea that, you know what, I need to ask myself these questions, deconstruct my thought process on what I believe homeschooling is, or not even homeschooling, education, learning is. Another question that you can ask yourself is the reason why our children actually go to school. They go to school so that they can learn a breadth of information so that they can now reintegrate themselves into society and live. Now, there are many ways to do that. Some parents and children prefer a more structured environment. Other ones may feel a little safer in the box of curriculum styles. Other people may be a little bit more eclectic, and there's the gamut. And honestly, this is an opportunity as deschooling to get to learn what works for you, what works for your child, and what works for your family structure. If you ask 20 homeschoolers what they do and how they do it, you will literally get 20 answers. Why? Because homeschooling, the philosophy behind homeschooling, has a lot to do with the way in which your family structure works and integrating learning as part of that works well for you. So what would work well for myself may not necessarily work well for another homeschooler, but does it mean that it's wrong? No, it just works in that manner for each individual or each family. You'll find yourself, after you take some time off, whether it's a few weeks, I would advocate a few months. It sounds like a long time. and taking that time off, you'll find yourself finding a groove with you and your child, a more relaxed pace, a pace that says, wow, I'm getting to know my child. This is a chance for you to get to know your child in a more intimate way, going back to that connection, because it's through that connection. And I will say this, in the 12 years of homeschooling that we've done and learning each of our children, the number one need that most children have is to connect. The number one need is connection. And when you think of homeschooling and you think of the connection, and it's through the actual connection that learning takes place. When a child feels connected to their caregiver, it's a safe space for them. When they feel connected, they can open up and you can learn what the child's interests are. You can learn what they're about. You can feel connected. There are things that you may want to impart into your child, and they're in a receptive space to learn what those things are. So deschooling allows for that. There are many ways in which you can deschool without necessarily grabbing the textbooks and coming at home. There's multiple ways. How does that look? We can go for walks, have deep conversations with your children, sit back and observe them. In the beginning, they may sleep a lot. In the beginning, they may be bored. In the beginning, they may just want to go on video games, which I am either here or there with. Our children don't do video games, but some children may, and they may get that chance. It's a chance for them to defrag from thinking that learning only operates in this system. Defrag to get back to their true love. Children by nature are born with their interest in cute. They know it, they're very in tune with it, and what happens is that they end up going to school, and because they're taught in school what to think and how to go about doing that, many times those interests get waned. And most of the times, if you're here right now, you know that some parents are seeing that waning in their child. They're seeing that disinterest in their child. And it's that disinterest that's causing them to wonder, well, man, I don't think my child is really thriving in this system anymore, or they're not doing as well anymore. And that's mainly because the child has moved away from their natural interests, their natural bends. So the aspects of deschooling allows you to take the time to reconnect with the child, for the child to reconnect with themselves. And that's really important. The easier a child learns themselves and they know themselves and they're learning themselves, because that's a process. We as adults are still evolving and we learn ourselves as we go, and things change and our environment shape us. That the child learns that, you will find that they are thriving with learning, because they are going to go back to their interests, their passion, the things that they've been by far, excited about. It's going to show itself. Sometimes it takes a while. What I have found is that most people who go from traditional schooling, and then from traditional schooling they take that period to deschool, and that's not unschooling, it's deschooling. It's taking a period to stop and reconnect. What I've found is that once they reconnect, they are now able to pursue that passion. They find an ebb and a flow in the way they go about structuring their home towards learning. They start learning their child. They start making that connection, and it's that connection that allows them to be able to open up and realize that learning is taking place from the time they wake up in the morning to the time they go to bed at night. It happens throughout the day. It happens when they're doing their chores. It happens when they go for a walk. It happens when they play at the park. It happens when they go to the grocery store. It happens when they fix a tire, if they help their parents do that. It happens when they look at you negotiating, when you're doing your work and they're learning and seeing you do that along the way, and learning how to negotiate, learning how to communicate, learning how to divide, learning how to explore. It happens all the time. It happens in the car when you're driving, and it happens anytime. It happens on their quiet times. It's never stopped. It never stops. It just keeps going. And you will find that you will get a groove with you and your child. Things that you can do when you're deschooling. There are a few things that you can do, many things that you can do, and I've listed a few of them already. But things like going to the parks, many parks, going on a hike, taking a trail, reading a book together. Even if your child is an exceptional reader, you can find a biography or a book that maybe you both may have interest in, even as a teenager or a younger teenager or a younger child. You can read books with them together, maybe a book that's complex, and discuss it together. You will get a chance to see how your child thinks, but find something that they're interested in first. Always go in that direction first. Go with their interest first, because once you do that, it will allow you to go down a rabbit hole, so to speak, trace the rabbit trail. And that may lead into a conversation, that may lead into questions, that may lead into you saying, oh my goodness, I don't even know the answer to that. Why don't we go look it up together? And you will find that there's an ebb and a flow and a dynamic that you end up learning with your child through reading, even if they're teenagers. Remember, children thrive on connection. And most of the times, if not all of the times, that's what a child, their deepest desire is to be able to connect with their caregiver, connect with their parents. So if there are museums that are open at this time, if there are interests that the child wants, maybe taking something in a technology, something and going after that, maybe the child is interested in behind the scenes of how videos work, how movies are played. Just get the chance to take the time to know your child and take the time to connect with them, and you will see that blossoming of what your child is into, and it comes out. And then from there, then you can now take what you're learning in the few months, weeks to months to even up to a year. You will take those things and then you can continue to incorporate life and learning into that paradigm that you've shifted. Many times, deschooling allows the parent to deconstruct many of the frameworks that we've held about how children learn. On my page, Naturopathically Speaking, I have listed a few resources of books if you're just starting out, and pretty good websites that are very comprehensive. It may take you a few weeks to months to go through some of these websites because they're very comprehensive and they touch on all aspects of homeschooling, all aspects, from if you have disabilities for children, or if you have a gifted child, or whatever the case is. There's lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of content available for you to check and look into. Should you just sit down and just pour over all of this? That's another question. I would say no. I would say no. Drop everything. Drop everything from the perspective of dropping the idea of grabbing the textbooks and wanting to sit at the table and reconstruct school at home. Drop all of that. Let the child play. Let them play. Let them relax. Let them connect with you. Go places together within the confines of the pandemic. Go in the outdoors with the children. Just this morning, we were at the park and our kids were eating their snack, some nuts and some raisins, and for the 4-year-old, some of that dropped to the ground by the grass. And this is giving you an example of how learning happens so spontaneously and all the time. And the nuts, and then of course it was in the grass, and so a ton of ants came by. Within a few moments, it was smothered and covered in ants. The ants came, and all of the children, including my 12-year-old, all got down on their knees, unprompted, to just observe the ants. Observe how quickly they were coming. How are they eating the food that they're taking? Where are they going? Where's their anthill? Where's their home? Where are they going? All of the questions that naturally come up with children, because children by nature are curious. All of it. We got a chance to teach them about how diligent ants are, how they have no leaders, how they are self-driven, how they're all these things. We got life lessons in. They learned a lot. When we came home, we We were going to explore on other books that we have and other things about more ideas around ants. So in that space of time, within about an hour or so, because they left the ants and they went and they played and they rode their bikes and their skates and their scooters and their skateboards, we ran, we had a good time, they interacted and so forth. They came back after about an hour to check on the ants, to see how those ants were going. Did they eat all of their food? Did they take it with them? Were they bored? Did they crush it up? All of these curious, that was a science lesson right there. That was a lesson in nature. That was a lesson on how many ants can you count? I mean, there's so much of life. So when you deconstruct the paradigm that learning only takes place in the classroom, and you start asking yourself if learning really can happen all of the time, this is the period that deschooling allows you to do that. And I'm telling you, what you'll find is that you will find your groove in between there, in between those months of taking time off. You'll get to know your child better, and learning can take place in a more organic way, even if you need to incorporate curriculums. Then you will learn your child's learning style. You will learn your child's interests. You're going to learn things more about your child, and then you can gear how you want to go about homeschooling into that. But I can guarantee you, as you take the time to deschool, take the time to stop, you will find that, wait a second, we are homeschooling. My child is learning. Things are happening so organically, even if they're doing workbooks and so forth, but it's happening so organically, there would be a joy in doing it as opposed to an overwhelming feeling. Now, learning happens in an asynchronous way. So you'll find that sometimes they're interested in one subject matter. We don't do subjects in our home. We're more of unschoolers or life learners. They may be interested in one aspect or in another. Just the other day, my 8-year-old, we had a one-on-one. So she went to my doctor's appointment. We talked about what happens in the doctor's office. She got a chance to see my doctor, my naturopathic doctor, draw my blood. We talked about different lab tests and what it does, how the body's influenced by food and lifestyle factors. On our way home, we were connecting. She was telling me things in her mind. Of course, children have a lot of questions all the time. This is how they learn. And so we talked about all of that. We had to stop at the grocery store, and there were lots of things that we usually get on sale. Well, she saw one of the brands that we get, and it's one thing that she likes, and she saw it was 2 for $7. The original price is $4.99. So there was our decimal lesson. Without saying that it was, there was her math, because if 2 were for $7, how much would one cost? Now in this case, she put up her fingers and she tried to do 4 and 3, and it didn't really make as much sense. So she had one finger in the middle and then thought, oh, I get it, Mom. It's $3.50. And so it is that they're learning. Remember, learning happens all the time. All the time. All the time. Math is everywhere. Geography is everywhere. English is everywhere. Social studies is everywhere. Art is everywhere. And once you start seeing life as the paradigm and as the breeding ground for learning, then you would see that it's easy to incorporate all of life, and it's asynchronous. So you may find that they may have this one day or this for a few weeks, a subject matter for a few weeks, and then they may switch to another one. And so it allows you to get into a groove where you're going with the child's pace as opposed to what we think the conventional system's pace should be. And I tell you, learning will be a joy and fun for your family and for you and your child. Another thing that you may find in the deschooling process is a lot of fear. And many times that fear is from the idea that we need to keep up with what societal norms and what the school system is doing. Fear that your child is missing out. Fear that you're not capable of teaching your child what they need to know. Fear of some of the fun things that your children may have learned in school. Sometimes there's a lot of that. But when you actually stop yourself and ask, well, what do I really feel about that? And why do I feel this way? Then trust me, the answers are within. It will come up. So deschooling allows you to shift those paradigms, question the thought process of why you did what, deconstruct the idea of how learning really works, deconstruct that you really need to keep up with kids or other people or whatnot. We know, science has proven it, research has been done for decades over, that when you are in a place of readiness, that learning happens the most effectively. The most effectively. Learning happens at a place of readiness. So if a child comes to you and says, Mom, what is a sheriff? What does a sheriff do? Their innate desire to learn that allows you now to teach them about their community, teach them about what a sheriff does, teach them about safety, teach them about, so all of that because of their interest. Children are always interested in learning what makes sense to them when it makes sense. And when we allow that process to take place, we find that the learning happens like this. It happens this quickly, it happens very naturally. You don't have to teach a child to read. You don't need to do that. When the child is ready, reading will happen. And the older the child is, the better it is. I know it sounds crazy, but the older it is, the better it is, because now you have allowed your child to have experiences in life, experiences around them. And the more experiences they have, the easier it is for them to connect when they read the words, the comprehension, the understanding. And so what you'll find with many homeschoolers is the average age for them to read is around 8, the average age. And when they do start reading, their curve for reading goes very steep. It goes really steep. It goes up. Before you know it, they're reading chapter books. It has happened to so far 3 or 4 children. They're reading, and their reading started much later when they were ready, a point of readiness, and they went steep up to the point where our son, on average, he covers about, I want to say, chapter books on average a year between 300 and 300 to 600 books a year, chapter books. This is no exaggeration. This is on his own. And that does not include every other book that he reads outside of chapter books. More than the average adult can read in their lifetime. In their lifetime, more books than I've read. Okay, well, I've kind of read a lot for school and so forth, but still, more than most people would read in their lifetime. And this is all driven from within. Why? Because when he was at a place of readiness, he latched on to reading. It's going to be the same for math and other subjects. You will find that your child may love math. They may love a lot of numbers, and you can gear it that way. Maybe one child loves history. Maybe another child loves art. Maybe another child loves exercise and physicality and being more athletic. Each child is so different, but you can tailor learning to what the child's natural bend is. And I will say, deschooling for a few months allows you to do that. So trust that process. Take the time to deschool. It is a very, very, very important factor if you are considering homeschooling. It's going to take the stress and the overwhelm and the thought process out of thinking that you have to bring school at home in a certain way and get it into what you and your child will be doing together. The connection of that, it will do that, and you will love it, and it will work in a much synchronous way for you and your family. Before you look up, you'll find yourself homeschooling and think, oh wow, I didn't realize that we deschooled and we're into homeschooling, and you would be doing something that works well for all involved. So instead of jumping into the curriculums and then jumping into all of what everyone pushes at you, which creates total overwhelm for the parent and then in turn overwhelm for the child, take the time to just pause. Drop everything. Allow the child to reconnect with themselves. Allow the child to pursue their interest. Get to know your child. You already know them. You may have forgotten because we've gotten into the routines of school and going for it and homework and assignments and projects and all these things, but take the time to get to know your child all over again. Get to know them. Take the time. They have to reconnect with themselves and go back to what they love, because we're all born with it. We all know already what we like. You will see it. You know it. As a parent, you already know it. You are your child's first teacher, after all, and you can continue to go along with them. Another question people ask is, what about areas that you don't know? Well, when you teach your child or shift the paradigm that learning only happens in the classroom, or I have to be an expert in certain subject matters to teach them, when you shift from that to teaching your child that learning happens all the time, because I know years ago with our first, and thankfully there was a 4-year gap between him and the next child, so I had a lot of chance to iron out those kinks. But what I found was a fear factor of, okay, well, I'm studying to be a doctor, so all of what's required for a whole health doctor and a whole health and life holistically, I'm aware of. But what about these subject matters that I know nothing about? How am I going to teach him? What am I going to do? And all of the panic that most parents experience. Trust me, when you deconstruct that learning can happen from the time you're 0 to the time you die, then you take on a different paradigm. We are right now in an information age. If you choose to be ignorant, it's obviously a choice. Ignorance is now a choice. It's been said before, but it really is a choice. You have so much information at your fingertips that there really is no reason to be fearful of learning something together with your child. So even if you're dealing with the subject matter and there's something that you're not familiar with, you can both explore that together. You can go together to explore that. You know what? They may ask you a question that may stump you, and that's okay. You can say, you know what? I really don't know the answer to that. Why don't we go look it up together? What do you think is happening in that chance? What you're doing there is teaching your child that it is easier, or it's better to know how to find information, where to find information, learn how to utilize resources to get to where they need to go. Therein lies an aspect of problem solving, and they know that you're doing it with them in a safe space. So you can go together and then we can discuss, oh wow, I did not know that fact about the Statue of Liberty. I did not know that. I did not know all of these things. Wow, now we can have a conversation around that and trust the rabbit hole. It may lead you into more questions about things, and before you know it, you've covered history, science, math, reading, writing, all in the concept of one conversation, or in pursuing your information through YouTube, through your library. That's a great resource. Through other experienced homeschooling families, moms of other sort, there is information available all the time. So don't feel overwhelmed if you're not able to answer questions, or if you feel that there's a subject matter that you're not able to teach. Go at it from the perspective and teach your child that because learning happens all the time and it never stops, even as an adult, that you too can learn these subject matters together. And you know what? It makes it that much more fun for the child, because remember, children thrive on connection. Just remember that deschooling is a process that takes you from the public system, from the framework or the traditional public system, to now learning something on your own with your family. And it's just a period where you're going to hit the reset button. Ask yourself the questions of fear. Why am I afraid? What am I thinking about education that's holding me back? When the parent answers those kinds of questions, then you can bring a healthier sense of self to your child, a more calm, a more confident sense of self to your child, and then they can feed off of that and you can go learning together. Whether you choose curriculums, after you take the time to learn your child, you're going to learn that they love art, or they love Spanish, or they love physicality, or they love math, or they love whatever the subject matter, it doesn't matter. But you can now find that, wow, they seem to be thriving doing this as I sit back and observe. Now, everything in nature, if you look at it, is observation. When we learn a lot about nature and how nature works, it's through observation. And if you slow yourself down enough, life will teach you everything you need to know. It will. It's there. It's there for the teaching. It's always teaching. There's a Chinese Proverbs that says, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. Why? Because the teacher is always there. It's always there. The teacher is always available through resources, life is always teaching us. And if you have that attitude that life is ready to teach you when you're ready, you'll find yourself relaxing more into a place of readiness for your child and for you. Learning will happen all the time. It will be there and it'll be available for all in your family to learn in their own way. Just trust the process. I gave you guys several examples, slowing life down enough to be able to observe things. Kids are curious by nature. They are always taking in information of all sorts. Sometimes they may hear a song. Sometimes they may hear a conversation. Sometimes they're listening to the radio. And they may hear something that doesn't make sense to them. And they'll come and ask you, Mom, what does this mean? And sometimes they may not even pronounce it properly depending on how old they are. And you say, what are you talking about? Why don't you give it to me in a sentence? Oh, well, I heard it on the radio and it said this. Oh, that's what that is. And now you can talk to them through that concept and explore that and trust it. They will ask more questions. You go down the rabbit hole. You can go to YouTube. You can find books. This is how you know your child is learning. Another thing you can do is take a lot of pictures. Take a lot of pictures of what they're learning. Take a lot of inventory. Keep a digital portfolio of many of the things that your child is doing. And you can look back after 1 year and trust and believe you will be surprised at how much they have learned in a space of time, even in the process of deschooling. Well, if anyone has questions for me at this time, now would be the time to ask any questions. I will be popping on again for some more conversations surrounding homeschooling. One of the things that is most important to me is teaching children and families how to incorporate a healthy foundation for their children. And I'm putting together a course that will allow you to give you the blueprint for what it takes to give children a firm foundation so that when they are ready to take off and learn more complex subject matter, that they are well equipped with a strong foundation so that they can learn. If that's something that you are interested in, you can private message me your emails, send me a message through emails, and I can give you some information on that if you are interested, and we can go from there. But I think it's more important than anything else, considering the pandemic that we are in right now, and how it's reconstructed our entire way of living and being, that it's important for us to teach children the foundation, to not just teach them about health and well-being, because your health is your life. It is very important for them to understand how their body works, how things operate within the sphere of them, their emotions, their diet, the things that affect them, so that when they are ready to learn, they will soar. They'll have all the tools in place to succeed. And then we wouldn't have to be part of the contribution to the 200 million Americans that are either sick, overweight, diabetic, pre-diabetic, autoimmune, and all of the issues that have come up that are causing such a big issue with our health system and overwhelming our health system. They won't be part of those statistics.